Today's a warning about content creators, especially this week with the hot topic of selling Mo Salah. Now, if you're considering selling Salah, have a listen before you do something you might regret.
Is he going to try something special from outside the box? He has, and it's in! A sensational strike! The shot didn't look on, but he took a chance, and it's gone straight into the top corner! From outside the box, a fantasy Premier League podcast with FPLHaul.
It actually feels so strange that as someone who tries to play FPL differently, I'm now making a podcast suggesting people shouldn't be selling the most owned, most template, current highest scoring FPL player in the game, and one who has consistently been one of, if not the best FPL player to own over the last few seasons. But here we are. As always, I will look at both sides of the argument and give some reasons as to where or why I could possibly see selling Mo Salah could potentially be a good move. But let's start with why we currently have a trending move to sell Salah. So people have seen three key things. One, content from creators. Two, a straight up lack of returns since coming back from the African Cup of Nations. And three, his body language and that current eye test when you're watching him, that lack of enthusiasm, or people are just not quite rating him on the pitch right now. So we're going to look into these 3 points. So we're going to start with your friendly neighbor, the content creator. Sadly, not that friendly. Some honestly, perhaps some dishonestly. So honest content creator or not, I've mentioned before that everyone has their own agenda or their own bias, consciously or subconsciously. I've mentioned before about selecting a specific number of game weeks to look at, or games, specific stats that you look at one player but not another, certain fixtures or oppositions that they face, things like that. So to likely prove a point that they're trying to make or a conversation that they're trying to start. And that's fine. And it's not necessarily done on purpose. But remember, their mind is already made up. They already said that they like player A or sell player B, use this chip planning game week C, and they've recorded or they've written about their idea that is already cemented in their mind. Now they're trying to justify their reasoning, and that's where the bias and agenda comes in. At all times, remember, your number one priority is your team and your plan. Unless your teams are absolutely identical, then the content will never match up to what is best for your team. FPL is essentially you versus the world, and you're trying to look the smartest fantasy football manager out there. Doing well in FPL is like telling the world that your football knowledge is great, therefore love and respect me, fellow football managers and football fans. So when we make the plans and the decisions, we feel like we need to justify them. So if your plan pays off, you look incredible and people think you're amazing. And if they don't, well, you've already pre-made a piece before the game and your reasoning was sound and the move was still right. And that's why perhaps all content will have some bias or hidden agenda inside. Now, if we have a look at the dishonest creators, so perhaps dishonest is a little bit strong, but the point about this part is simple. It's clicks, it's clickbait, it's cash. If just 2 weeks ago I created content suggesting people shouldn't sell Salah, I'd be known as Captain Obvious faster than Matt Letizia deletes his tweets. Creators need content to create. Captaincy videos have essentially been void this season due to Salah's perma-captaincy status. When a player pops off, or a player blanks for 2 or 3 games, or a double game week gets announced, that's why every content creator you see jumps on that little piece of news, because it's content, something for them to talk about, something for them to create. And the crazier the plan or the clickbaity the title, the more viewers or readers that creator gets. So if you suggested to people now or a few weeks ago to sell Antonio, despite his good start to the season at West Ham, no one would batter an eyelid, but equally no one would watch or read your content. But if you suggest selling one of the all-time FPL greats, this season's leading top points goal scorer, one of the most famous players in the Premier League, the most expensive player in FPL right now, most highly owned, well, enjoy those clicks, because that is going to get people talking and watching. But unfortunately for the viewers and the listeners and the readers, copying that move, whilst the content creator sits there, never sells Salah and keeps him probably captain most game weeks for the rest of the season as well. Not including their free hit, by the way, because getting rid of Salah on a free hit doesn't count. It doesn't count as getting rid of him because he's coming back the next week. I recently compared the idea now of selling Salah to the idea that I saw again on content or on Twitter from big accounts or small accounts, the idea of selling Son to Kane, even for a hit. A move that I would never back and never understood it at all until you take into account that the clickbait power potential of, putting in big lights, selling Son for a hit or Son to Kane, which is ultimately the content creators wouldn't do it themselves, but it's the idea of having the content to discuss and have those titles to get that viewership or readership for their content. Clickbait and, to be frank, fakeness and bullshit is pretty rife the last year or two, if truth be told, in FPL. And it's one of the few reasons why I genuinely get frustrated with the FPL community, with small accounts and channels and big accounts and channels, and FPL content creation as a whole. I'll just end this segment with an alert and a warning to just be very careful with the next article that you read or video that you watch or podcast that you listen to, and really look into bias, agendas, and especially discussions and plans purely made for clicks. And also follow if that content creator actually goes ahead and does what they say. So if they're suggesting to sell Mo Salah and then, lo and behold, they haven't, that might be a suggestion that they might not actually have your best interests at heart. I love FPL and I love football discussions, but I only enjoy those that are made in good faith and with interesting ideas as the driving force rather than the desire for clicks and cash. Point number 2 then, let's get straight back to Salah specifically. So his returns from AFCON have put people off. Let's have a look at his direct returns from AFCON. 1 point came on as a sub. 3 points. Okay, he's blanked. 10, 18, 3, 9, 1, another sub appearance, and 3. So the people point out the lack of returns. Well, it isn't even that bad. He's got 2 big hauls since coming back from AFCON, and he's got a 9-pointer. And 2 of the games he was a sub, either because he was just returning from AFCON or he was injured. And he might still be carrying that injury. He might not be fully over that yet. We don't quite know. People need to remember that they are judging Salah now compared to the start of the season, when Salah was ridiculously amazing. Now, he was finishing 21.7% of his chances from game week 1 to 17, and he had an accuracy rate of 43.5%. So almost half of all of his chances were accurate. And he blanked just once in the first 17 matches. Even at over 13 million, he was undervalued. He got 15 goals and 10 assists in 17 games, and I think we've taken that for granted. He got 5.59 more assists and 3.4 more goals than he was expected to. So that incredible run just wasn't sustainable. His stats were insane, and the results he got was somehow even better than the insane stats that he was posting. But we still took the points and assumed that what he was doing wasn't superhuman. And you jump to now, and he is still returning, just at a more human rate. Stat-wise, he's still right up there near the top, but now he's actually underperforming with regards to his own stats, not in general or stats compared to others. He's getting 3.32 fewer goals and 0.95 fewer assists than he should be getting. So he's gone from insane stats and beating that to now still getting really great stats, but underperforming and not getting what the stats suggest he should be. Now, this season when people refuse or were put off the likes of Harry Kane or Cristiano Ronaldo or Bruno Fernandes, those players were poor all round in terms of stats, in terms of their returns, and in terms of the eye test. But Salah is still posting really top-level stats. His returns are fine, they're not even that bad. And also, the eye test can be deceiving because it's all opinion-based. This leads me nicely onto point number 3, and it's about watching the games and looking at his body language and sort of judging him based on the eye test. So we get an hour and a half peek into every footballer every week. Now, we can assume that he is gutted because he's lost in the African Cup of Nations final and he didn't make the World Cup. But we see him for 90 minutes a week, unless, the Champions League football as well. But 90 minutes a week, one football match a week, and we cannot deduce his perceived lack of finishing and form is because he's sad, or he's not up for it, or he doesn't want it anymore. He probably is sad. He's lost the final. He's not going to the World Cup, but the man has been injured. He's lost Champions League finals. He's then come back, led the charge, and won the Champions League afterwards. He's lost in close league battles with Man City before, and then come back to win the Premier League. Salah is a winner, and just because he's lost a couple of games, I don't believe it that he's massively thrown off his game because he's lost a couple of football matches. But again, I'm doing now what I'm telling you not to do. Stop guessing his mental state based on watching him on TV for 90 minutes and thinking you know the inner mind of a world-class athlete because his shoulders are slightly slumped or he might not be grinning ear to ear. You're not a psychiatrist, and even if you were, you don't know the inner workings of Salah via glimpses of his face during a football match. Personally, I think it's likely that he's still getting over his recent injury, or perhaps he's exhausted from playing in pretty much every match in every possible football competition going this year. But either way, he's a top-class athlete, and he's lost a couple of games, but that has not suddenly turned him into a player that lacks quality. He might be sad, or injured, or tired, we just don't know. Players go through rough patches and purple patches too, but quality always shines through. Just remember how ridiculously good and unsustainable his returns were at the start of the season. Don't take those first 17 game weeks as what a normal player should be returning, because it isn't. He was way above and beyond anything we'd probably ever seen before. Plus, stat-wise, he is still getting into the right places and having great chances. It's just now he's playing more at a human level, and instead of finishing 20% of his chances, he has cut down to about 10%. But interestingly, his actual attempt accuracy has only dropped from 43.5% to 36.8%, which shows that he's still extremely accurate and he's having good chances. It's just that the ball isn't going into the back of the net as much as it should be. For reference, Harry Kane, the same time span, has a shot accuracy of 39.5% and a conversion rate of 18.4%. And yet we've seen people taking Son out for hits and doing, moving mountains to bring Harry Kane into the side, but he's only slightly ahead of Salah in terms of his stats. So in what circumstances could I understand selling Salah? So the first one, it's going to be the chasers and risk takers. We are in the end game now. We are getting towards the end of the season, and if you're not happy with your rank, getting rid of the player that is so highly owned and pretty much captained every week. If you think between now and the end of the season, you can choose better captaincies and choose better players that'll get more points between now and the end of the season, then go for it. If you are sat at 100k and you want to get to the top 20k, if you're going to sit there and captain Mo Salah every week, your chances are you might not make that objective because he's so highly owned and so highly captained. It's all or bust. This is the kind of play style that I would play because for me, it's either I'm going to shoot for the stars or I'm going to fall back to earth. And I get that, but I do understand the risks that I'm taking. The second one, choosing players simply with more games. For example, you could sell Salah for Bruno Fernandes, who has a double in game week 33, and then you could potentially sell him for someone like Maddison, bank the extra cash, but you've got a player that's going to double in 33 with Bruno, and then you're going to have a player that doubles in 36 and 37 with Maddison, as well as having good fixtures. So then you're outweighing the fact of having a player just simply having more opportunities by playing more games. And the third one is to just bring someone who you think is better, is in better form, or has better points potential. So for example, a popular choice right now is Kevin De Bruyne. Now, Manchester City have the same amount of fixtures as Liverpool do. They're about to play each other this weekend. And I completely understand why people might lean towards someone like Kevin De Bruyne, because the fixtures towards the end of the season heavily favour, I think, Man City ahead of Liverpool. But is Kevin De Bruyne himself a better option than Mo Salah? Again, that's up for you to decide. If you think between now and the end of the season, Kevin De Bruyne will score more points than Mo Salah, then you have the answer. That is someone that you could sell him for. Okay, so additional thoughts, just to round off the podcast, final thoughts. High ownership danger is something. Now, I hate high ownership. I hate effective ownership. I'm sure a lot of managers do as well. It's not a way that I particularly like to play the game, but he's the biggest shield in the game. Salah is 60.8% owned. If you think he's doing poorly now, but he turns that corner and gets back to his best, and he bangs, boy, you are in big trouble. This guy every single week has like at least 150% effective ownership, which means even if you've got him and don't captain him, he's likely working against you. But if you don't even have him in your side and he goes ahead and he brings back some of that that performance and getting those hauls like we know he's perfectly capable of, then you could be in big trouble, and that would be a huge rank double. You have to remember the casual players in the game who have just got him, the Liverpool fans who have just got him, and just the perma-captain people who are just going to have him and captain him every single week. And I know on Twitter you'll see some people selling him, but the vast majority are still going to hold him and they're still going to captain him. So it is a huge risk. And if you are a chaser and risk taker, I completely understand it. If you just think that bringing in players that are going to have more games than him, then that's fine. But Liverpool are in the hunt for the title. Salah has proven to be a player that is very, very seldom dropped. I think he's definitely one of the fittest athletes in the Premier League. A problem that surrounds Kevin De Bruyne. If you think Kevin De Bruyne is better, that's fine. But I don't see Kevin De Bruyne as a 90-minute man, which might be fine for you. I just feel as though the idea of selling Salah is not the way to go. And the final warning, really think about the content that you consume, reading, listening, and watching. Some might have a potentially honest agenda and they've just got their mind made up about a certain plan or a certain player to bring in or take out, and they're going to sort of project that onto you, which is fine. It's opinion based. But also, some creators out there might have the agenda of just throwing out ideas to put in your mind, hoping it sticks so they can take the glory. But really what they want your clicks and they want to earn some cash. So I'm going to leave it there for today, guys. Thanks for catching today's podcast. If you enjoyed it, maybe leave a like or a good review rating. Perhaps give it a share online, and feel free to chat to me and catch me on Twitter at FPLHaulRob or on YouTube. Have a good one, guys. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.